And welcome back to another episode of Second Impressions. This is Astound's web series where we discuss real questions about marketing and provide business insiders insight on important issues, all related to marketing. I'm Trevor Heaton, and I've got my colleagues Greg Bond and Erik Wolf with me. Gentlemen, we're back, and we have a question that we get asked often, and I know we're going to need the time to review this one, so I'm going to jump right into it today. This is something that we hear often, and I think it's going to be really important for the people out there watching this. The question comes from Isabel. She's a VP of sales at an engineering firm, and her question is, I need to be able to track ROI for all of my individual marketing campaigns so I can trim the fat. What's the best or fastest way to get that done? So guys, let's talk about the ROI. This is something we hear often, and I think could be misleading for people.
Trimming the fat and ROI. I think that there's ROI is obviously important as a big concept, right? When we make investments in our business, we expect to recoup some value from those investments, and I think that the problem that a lot of people try, and I think it stems from sometimes a misunderstanding of what certain campaigns are for and what we're trying to accomplish. But I think that what we end up doing is taking this thing, and that's a big thing and a big question, and making it into all of these little teeny tiny things. And I think that we tend to, with marketing, more than with other areas of the business, I think that we tend to get really way too micro in trying to decide how we're going to evaluate ROI. And so at a campaign level, this awareness building campaign that I did, well, what's the ROI on that? It's not generating dollars. How many leads did we get from that? Well, we didn't get any leads from it because it's an awareness building campaign. And so the ROI makes it is difficult to manage in that case. And if you're and then if you're looking at it as a place to trim the fat, well, this thing doesn't generate ROI, let's cut it out. But what that's not telling you is the story of how that campaign may be supporting and contributing to the success of other campaigns. And so it's a big picture thing that we tend to look at through too small a lens. If I obviously as a business owner, there are a lot of people that and a lot of business functions that we have to fund. We fund operations, we fund product development, we fund bookkeepers, we fund lawyers, we fund IT, but we don't. But we tend to not view all of those things through these teeny tiny lenses. I might ask my lawyer to add a section to a contract that we're drafting, but that $600 that we spent adding that extra 2 paragraphs, I'm not asking for the ROI on that. I'm not saying now justify the ROI to me for this section that we needed to add. When my bookkeeper spends a morning reconciling company credit card accounts, I'm not looking at that and saying, hey, what was the ROI on that activity? No, it was just something that needed to be done in order to fulfill the big picture goal of having good books or having good contracts. These are marketing too, is a big picture thing. And when we're looking at ROI, we really want to look at it through a much bigger sort of window and not get mired in the details of trying to track profit to individual, very, very small activities. What we would say is the best way to measure the value as a business that you're getting from your marketing would be to look at 2 key numbers, lifetime value of a customer and cost to acquire a new customer. And obviously, in an ideal world, we're seeing one of those numbers go up, lifetime value, and we're seeing one of those numbers go down, cost of acquisition. And we're able to, and by looking at those things, we're able to very clearly measure or at least view in a tangible way what marketing's activities are resulting in, without getting down to the campaign level and saying the ROI isn't here, it has to go.
Yeah.
We try to avoid those kinds of conversations specifically, and we would more say, hey, the things that you should cut, if your objective as a business is X and we want to get here, the things that you should cut first, or the things that you should cut back on first, or trim the fat, so to speak, are the things in your portfolio that aren't contributing to that objective. If you've got campaigns that are designed to build awareness and our goal is retention, then absolutely, maybe you make the decision to cut back on awareness, because that's not our goal right now. That's where the fat truly is. It's not based on a measure of specific ROI on those individual campaigns.
Unless like you're comparing, if you have several different campaigns that are all measuring clicks as the predominant thing, you're trying to get traffic to your website, then what you could do is look at all your different campaigns and how much those clicks are costing, and relatively what that traffic looks like. So if you have some campaigns where the people that are clicking are spending longer on your site or bouncing less or whatever it is, it's considered higher quality. Maybe you're wanting to pay more for that. And so you have to look at it as an analysis between like campaigns, and then you can make a determination whether something isn't serving its goal as well as other methods. But I think too often businesses aren't doing enough of this marketing as a whole to make those determinations. And so it's really hard to compare one campaign's clicks to the next. And I think when that's the case, you end up having to have outside expertise to tell you, relative to like what they're seeing across the board, maybe with other clients like you or whatever it is, like what should we be expecting? What would be a reasonable cost per click? How much should an impression cost, and so on? You could get answers there. But I think the way that this question is often posed and the way we receive it, my dog this time.
Yeah, I know. And then mine barked back.
Yeah, nice.
I got one that's looking at me really funny right now.
Like plotting.
I don't want to see you getting eaten live.
Look at that fierce monster.
Impressions.
Yeah. So far, our casualty rate on second impressions is 0. So let's try to keep it that way.
Right.
But the way it's kind of set up as like a trick, because people are already looking to cut, and then they're trying to say, okay, where should I cut? And I think that'd be a much better way of approaching it, and just like being matter of fact about it, versus like what is most valuable to me, and then how do we, I would say, stay out of that. Like that's getting too into the weeds. Leave that to the tactical experts that already run those campaigns and stuff. And like, don't try to do a fool's errand of like saying, like specifically like attributing one click to a specific ROI. That's not what marketing is all about. We should have an overall idea of like, if we get 100 clicks, 2 of those should end up being really good leads. And of those 2 leads, we expect to close 1 of them. That would be a much better way of like looking at the whole picture and understanding what that flow is. But then if we're talking about it in those terms, the next step isn't just like, okay, then how do we get rid of half of that cost?
Right. So if I'm a business owner watching this, I'm hearing you talk about the clicks and the campaigns, and then Erik mentioned the customer acquisition and the lifetime value. Without getting too much into the weeds, how do we bring that together to determine what the customer acquisition cost and the LTV is? How do I, as a business owner, start to evaluate that?
Mostly by creating some sort of model that gets buy-in and agreement. The most important part is that you're basing those 2 metrics on something that is valid, trackable, and maintainable, and that everybody agrees with the ingredients that went into it. There's many ways you can slice and dice those metrics, but again, creating your own model that's going to work and have everybody agree to it, and then keeping and maintaining that over time is going to be the most effective thing you could do.
Yeah, there's obviously sort of generic kinds of formulas that'll get you there. Very often when we sit down with a customer, there's discussion of how are we going to modify those formulas and make sure that the right things are being input so that it's a good reflection of your business, and you can look at those numbers and say that feels true to me. That's a really important piece of this. But I mean, generally speaking, the lifetime value is just sort of think of it as the average gross margin. Usually we use gross for that versus say revenue or net profit. But from a gross profit perspective, what is the average customer worth to me over a life cycle? And so let's say that you're a consultant, and the average client stays with you for 29 months, and you can calculate that just by looking at all of the customers in recent history that have ended their contracts. Okay, well, this guy canceled after 29 months. This guy canceled after 30 months. This person stayed with me 4 years. This person only stayed with me 1 year. You develop that average. What's the average revenue per month? You multiply it out, or average gross per month. You multiply it out, and boom, you've got possibly a very reasonable lifetime value. But then there are other things that you may want to adjust for, like economic cycles, like changes in the business environment, or changes in your retention policies. There are all sorts of things that you may end up adjusting based on. And then from a cost per acquisition standpoint, it's really about what are all of the costs that it takes, sales and marketing, to close a deal. What's the sales commission? Are we paying for budget? Whose salaries are going against this? And how many new customers did we acquire? And let's take the big number, let's divide it by the number of new customers, and that's our cost per acquisition. Of course, there's a lot of ways that we can calculate that too.
Right.
From a basic perspective, these are things that are findable, they're trackable, and they're numbers that based on interactions of sales and marketing with the marketplace are going to evolve over time.
Right. Yeah, and I know this is a conversation we could probably go into for probably an hour or longer, probably even a half day of discussing this.
But it feels right to stop now.
It does. And I think what it does is kind of takes that ROI and puts it into perspective and gives people another way of looking at how they can measure their campaigns, how they determine the CAC and the LTV to really bring their marketing together. I guess a different perspective on how you measure your result.
Yeah, and ROI is a tough, when you get down to those teeny tiny levels. I mean, the same thing is that the new paragraph in my contract, the morning spent doing bookkeeping on credit cards, or any number of other activities in the business that we could pull out. Those are it's really difficult to look at that and say, oh, well, you know what, that activity was worth this to me. Marketing is no different. We've got to look at it through a big enough lens that the results that the information that we're getting is usable.
Right. Yeah. And I think this is a good place to really leave that. I would put it out there to people. If you're watching this and you do have some additional thoughts, you want more clarification around what we're discussing here, you're more than welcome. Email us at secondimpressions@astound.com, or connect with us via social media, however you want to do that, and we can continue this conversation. Isabel, I know you're going to have more questions about this, so we'll continue talking about this in more depth and detail. Every business is different, and there's a different way of approaching this. So, guys, I'm going to leave it right here. If you do have a question as a viewer, email us your question. We'll address it at a future episode. In the meantime, thanks for joining, and be well, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.
Later.